Okay, so I think we'll make a start. We may have one or two people joining us in the next couple of minutes, but as always, we have a packed session for our webinar. I think we'll kick off. So welcome everybody to our webinar this afternoon on accelerating circular innovation in urban landscapes. My name is Simon Clement, and I'm head of circular economy at ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability. And I'm here today in this webinar representing two different Horizon Europe funded projects, DEFINITE-CCRI and CircularInvest, which some of you may know. Both of these projects are aimed at providing technical assistance and business advice to help local promoters turn innovative circular economy business ideas into bankable, investable propositions. Now, of course, the transition to a circular economy will require a fundamental recalibration of the way in which our societies and our economies are functioning, from a linear model, which is based on excessive consumption and the primacy of lowest cost above all, to a circular economy based on the preservation of value in the materials that we're using and also the environments and societies in which we live. And such a transition, of course, requires innovation in many different directions, innovation in the way that we're producing, innovation in the way that we are consuming, innovation in the way that we are disposing of things, and things can be brought back into recirculation. In our webinar today, we're going to be looking very specifically at how we can try to facilitate this type of innovation, with a particular focus on looking at small to medium-sized European cities and what they can do to kickstart innovation like this. I'm very happy to say that we are joined here by four excellent speakers in our webinar. We will have Kristin Strandberg from Circular Economy presenting twice for us today. She's involved in both of the CircularInvest and DEFINITE-CCRI projects as well. We have two speakers directly from city governments. We have Dieter DeSmedt from the city of Ghent, and we have Manuel Semedo from the city of Portugal, here to share their experiences and how they are trying to promote innovation in their cities. And we will have Dora Fazekas from INOVA+, who is the project coordinator of the CircularInvest project. So just very quickly, before I kick off, before we pass on to Kristin for our introductory presentation, just to mention that we will be monitoring the chat messages. So of course, if you have any specific questions, please ask those directly in the chat. We'll ask then likely the person who puts the question forward, we'll unmute their mic and ask them to speak. Your microphone is currently muted, and this is something that only we can change. So as mentioned, if you are interested in making a point, put your comment in, raise your hand, and we will unmute you. Finally, the session will be recorded. There is the option to disable your camera, of course, if you do not wish to be recorded on screen. Good. Okay. So I think that's enough of an introduction from me. Let's then pass across to our first speaker, Kristin from Circular Economy, who will give us, sorry. Sure. Before we go into this, in fact, no, we have one or two questions for the participants of the webinar as well, to get you guys involved as well before we start with the presentations. We have a couple of questions that we would like to pose. So first of these is a Slido poll. These things, of course, never run smoothly. Okay, here we go. So we have the Slido link on the left-hand side there. I'm sure most of you are familiar with how Slido works. So you can open up either with the QR code or directly with the web link there, put in the code, and you will be invited to join the quiz. So we're already seeing some participants joining. Okay, good. So first question, looks like most of you are registered now. How much waste does each EU inhabitant generate in a year? Is it almost 2 tons? Is it almost 3 tons? Or is it almost 5 tons? Your answers, please. Everybody has now voted. So everyone is sticking to the middle, almost 3 tons of waste generated each year. And the answer, almost 5 tons of waste is generated each year by each EU inhabitant. So even more than you might expect, a truly staggering amount of waste that we're each responsible for producing each year, a figure which needs to come down substantially, of course. So, second question, how much of that waste in the EU is currently recycled? Okay, so here we're a bit closer to the mark. I think we're all fairly pessimistic about the situation as it stands at the moment. Indeed, 40% of our current waste is recycled in the EU. Of course, this doesn't say also how it is recycled, but simply that it is used at all. So this is also a figure that needs to change substantially, but still hides a significant problem within that as well. Good. Okay, well, thanks everybody for participating in this. So now I think we can move across, and I would like to ask Kristin to take the floor and provide our introductory presentation.
Yes, hi everyone. Thank you, Simon. My name is Kristin and I work as a city strategist at CircularInvest, which is an impact organization based in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. So indeed, I am part of both DEFINITE-CCRI and CircularInvest, and I'm here today to just give a little bit of an introduction to the topic. So if you could move on to my slides, please. I believe there are a few slides down. So if we just start by taking a little bit of a step back to understand the importance of cities. Cities are today at the center of the EU's economy. They cover only about 3% of our global land mass, but in the EU, they host as many as 75% of our population. But cities are also concentrated hotspots of innovation and creativity, and generating as much as 85% of the EU's GDP. Next slide, please. But although we see that cities have the capacity to drive change, they are still the major driver of environmental degradation and pollution. Cities consume about 80% of EU's energy, are responsible for 70 to 75% of both the greenhouse gas emissions as well as our material use, and they generate about 70% of EU's waste. And the impacts, they don't end there. Urban sprawl are responsible for transforming landscapes and thereby affecting ecosystems and biodiversity. And the impact goes far beyond a city's boundaries, as the products that we consume in our cities, they have been produced and transported from elsewhere around the world. So it's therefore critical that the circular economy is fundamentally integrated in urban development agendas. So if we take an understanding also of what circular economy means, let's go to the next slide and see how it means, what circular economy means in cities. So just like in a circular economy, in a circular city, we need to design resource flows that are kept at their highest potential for as long as possible. And we can do this through sharing, reusing, repairing, remanufacturing, and recycling and rethinking the status quo. So these core elements of circularity, they need to be embedded within each of the key urban systems, from water to housing and infrastructure to food and nutrition. For instance, in a circular city, we see that assets and products are shared or they're leased. Energy production is renewable and local. Buildings are modular and designed to be deconstructed or reused rather than demolished. And industries, they share their byproducts through industrial symbiosis. And mobility systems, they are cleaned and shared. So all these systems, they also need to feed into each other in order to maximize efficiency and to find synergies between these systems. Next slide, please. But why should cities aim at all this? We have found that the benefits, they are multiple. Circular economy interventions, they can help cities to build back better and to become more resilient. So circular principles, they can, for example, improve access to resources locally by recycling and reusing materials, which also reduces the dependency on imports and global supply chains. Circular principles can also lower greenhouse gas emissions and air pollution by prioritizing regenerative energy sources, such as solar power, as well as prioritizing sustainable transportation modes, such as public transport and bike infrastructure. They can improve waste management and savings on landfilling costs by using waste as a resource. And finally, for all this, we will need new ways of working and new products, which can also spur innovation in cities and create jobs and increase the competitiveness in global markets. But what does small and mid-sized cities have to do with this? Why are they important for this transition? If we look at the next slide, please. In many discussions in cities around in Europe, we see that bigger urban areas, they tend to dominate these discussions. But if we take a look at this map here, we see that the population density in Europe, as you can see here with the big spikes, they're actually quite few in comparison to all the other dots across the EU that show the urban population across the EU. So indeed, out of the 800 cities above 15,000 inhabitants in the EU, 700 of these 800 cities, they populate under 250,000 inhabitants, where we can see that the majority of our European cities are actually small and mid-sized. And if we look at the population, so where people actually live, we can see that 56% of Europe's population actually live in cities between 5,000 and 100,000 inhabitants. And below 100,000 inhabitants, it actually means that the city is considered a small town, so not even a mid-sized one. So how can these small and mid-sized cities actually pave the way for circular solutions? If we look at the next slide, please. Well, the benefits of smaller cities compared to the larger urban areas, they are multiple. A smaller scale can enable closer connection between the different departments across the local administration, but it's also a lot closer to the local business community and the community at large with inhabitants. And the smaller size, can also make them more adaptable and flexible for change and innovation compared to larger cities, which also paves the way for local experimentation. And finally, we see that smaller cities often have easier access to local resources from, for example, the agricultural or manufacturing sectors, which also can enable localized circular supply chains where the resources can be shared or repurposed across these different sectors. Next slide, please. So what action can cities take to implement circular projects on the ground? Well, we at Circular Economy, we have developed a framework to explain this in collaboration with other experts from organizations such as Ellen MacArthur Foundation, Metabolic, and ICLEI. We call this framework the Circular Cities Actions Framework. And the framework is structured around the 5 R's: rethink, regenerate, reduce, reuse, and recover, which are all 5 complementary areas that can work in parallel to start moving towards a more circular system. So the 5R, they expand the 3R framework that I think you all might be familiar with, the reduce, reuse, recycle, but it moves beyond waste management by including actions like rethink and regenerate that happens before we extract the materials. But also like reduce and reuse that can help us avoid waste to begin with. The model emphasizes the need to also act before waste is generated, where recycling and recovering of materials are the last resort. Business and project innovation is crucial across all these categories. So if we start with rethink, it means to question the status quo and to develop new and smarter ways of operating in our cities. So this means, for example, developing urban systems that are adaptive and that can support self-sufficiency. And if we move on to regenerate, it means to harmonize with nature. Here, it's important that the innovation that we find new ways of operating businesses without polluting our soils and environments. So this can be done by, for example, fostering regenerative farming practices. And then we have reduce, where we refer to doing better with less. And here it means to design infrastructure, processes, and products to minimize material, water, and energy use, as well as minimize waste generation from production to the end of use. And if we move on to reuse, where the proximity in small-scale cities really have an advantage. Here it means to use products and materials longer and more often. And this can be done by sharing or exchanging platforms that extends or intensifies the use of resources, products, spaces, or infrastructures. And finally, we have the end of the pipe where we have recover, which aims to make waste history by maximizing the recovery of resources and reintroduce them into production processes. And here, of course, we have the prime example of urban symbiosis, where byproducts by one company or production can be reintroduced to another. Also in the recovery of products, the closeness here between the public and private sector in these small-scale cities can really be beneficial to enable a closed-loop system locally. And if we move on to the next slide, please. So how can cities actually enable these actions? Well, the local governments, they can take on different roles in order to boost circular transition locally. Cities can, for example, act as promoters, where a clear vision, goals, and targets can promote and steer the overall direction towards a more circular future. But cities can also act as facilitators, creating connections and dialogue where circular businesses and local governments can benefit from each other. And finally, cities can act as enablers, where regulations and incentives can trigger circular change. And here it's, of course, important to note that for a truly enabling environment, local governments should preferably take on all these roles, where each role can target different necessary aspects in order to foster the circular innovation locally. So to finalize the presentation here, as presented here now today, the urban future of Europe is truly dominated by small and mid-sized cities. And within these cities, the local government, they can really play a pivotal role in shaping the future towards a more circular and sustainable one. So they can serve, for example, as the architects of transformative change, guiding and supporting local stakeholders, and thereby becoming truly the pioneers of circular practices. That was it for me. Thank you.
Kristin, thank you very much for giving us an excellent introduction, an excellent basis for the webinar, for understanding really why we are talking about this topic, why we've opened this discussion here today. We'll hear more from Kristin later on when she focuses on a new community of practice which is being established. But now let's move across to a couple of cities which are trying, exactly as Kristin says, to use the different levers at their disposal to promote this transition, to promote innovation at the local level. As mentioned, we're very happy to hear any questions. We will be opening the floor, hopefully, after these first two presentations. So if you have questions, either keep them in your head and raise your hand at the time, or put them in the chat. We'll try to come back to them when the presentations have finished. So first of all, we're going to move across to the city of Ghent and Dieter DeSmedt. Dieter, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. Also, thank you to Kristin for the big responsibility you give to the cities. But I do believe what you were telling. So I will give a quick run through how the city of Ghent wants to drive circular innovation within the city. For those who don't know Ghent, we are a city with 270,000 inhabitants, which makes us a medium-sized city. But we grow within the school days to, you can add 84,000 students, because we are a big student city. We also have a big port area. To drive and accelerate circular innovation, is it important to have a differentiated but also collaborative city policy towards circular economy. In my opinion, circular economy cannot only be seen throughout environmental glasses. Circular economy has to be in the driver's seat throughout different layers of the city policy. So when you're working on procurement, you have to think on mobility, you have to think circular. When you're working with citizens, you have to think circular. Me, I'm working for the Department of Economic Development, where circular economy is our main driver towards the economics of the future. I also believe that in policy making, you do not have to start from scratch. You have to work on the strengths you already have as a city and try to evolve these strengths to realize and to drive circular innovation. I firmly believe you have to start by building ecosystems, what also Kristin was telling, and try to build common ground with all stakeholders involved. So I will share some insights how we as a city we work or how we work towards circular innovation. So my first insight is be brave and dare to choose. I'm convinced that you cannot have it all, so you have to make choices, and you cannot grow into a circular economy in little bits, or you can, but it will take a long time. And if you want to go accelerate circular innovation, you have to go full force. So you can focus on your traditions, you can focus on your strange, but you have to accelerate circular innovation by really choosing to go full force for the circular innovation. So this means that in the coming years within the economic development department where I'm working, we will actively support all ecosystems that will drive our city towards circular innovation. And we do not want to drive innovation by promoting technology just for the sake of technology, or we do not want to drive our economy just because of the economy, but we want it to become a catalyst for a movement towards a more sustainable economy across all sectors. And by sustainable, we do mean circular, we do mean climate focused, but we also do mean that it's focused towards preservation and creation of new jobs. So on the economic part of the city, we will invest in technologies that have positive impact on society and boost projects that focus on urban circular innovation. So our economic development policy is widespread, but we do have we have chosen to choose to grow into economics of the future, all about clean tech. So that's our main focus within the city. And that helps us making the move from linear to circular. Because of the noise, it's not necessary, I think. Yeah, so this means that we have set clean tech as the main driver of the economics of the future, and we want to drive from a linear economy to a circular economy. And I've heard the great words of Kristin, who was telling you have to go to industrial symbiosis with the city. I think that's the thing we are talking about. So we have a big port area, so we focus on clean technologies who are disruptive and will be able to transform our industry and our city. But we are also supporting more small and local initiatives, but that's in the hands of my colleagues working on the environmental part, working on the citizen part. So that's how we align our strategies and the things we're working on. Making the move from linear to circular. At this point, we already have more than 200 circular organizations or companies in our city, and it's growing really every day rapidly. We already have more than 4,500 employees, and a lot of studies states that it will increase in the coming years very fast. So for us, it's really a choice to grow into this ecosystem. So what is our clean tech policy about? It's three things for me. It's setting up a strong ecosystem and partnerships. It's stimulating knowledge and experimentation, and it's creating space and top-notch infrastructure. And that gave away my three key insights, but I will dive into it. So in Ghent, we are a really close-knit community where everyone knows each other. And if we're talking about small and medium-sized cities, I think that is the ultimate asset as a city. It's possible to create ecosystem which enhance each other, where you can talk to each other. So we mostly say we're big enough to be a city, but we're small enough to call everyone and to know everyone. So we really value participation. We really work on co-creation, living labs, other initiatives that engage a wide range of industries and institutions. And I really believe a small or medium-sized city is best suited for this. Actually, I'm really convinced of this. So we have a lot of public entities. I won't go into that, but maybe to say we try to cluster them, and we also created a network which is called the Clean Tech Cluster Ghent, where strategies, projects, and initiatives are discussed and aligned. And this network creates us the possibility to create new opportunities by talking to each other, to know what it's all about, and to align strategies, which is really essential. I do think it's the role of the city to stimulate and to create openness and circular economy. It will not be realized alone. It will only be realized when you work together. So, for example, our port strategy is really aligned with our own city policy, and I do believe that's really important to work on that part. Then, of course, within clean tech or within circular economy, you need disruptive policymakers. You need disruptive startups and scale-ups. We try to stimulate and to help them to grow rapidly, for example, by setting up or helping out incubators, accelerators, but we also have grant programs where they can grow more fast and where get the possibility to get investments more rapidly. And then, of course, the industry, which is probably by all of you are thinking that's quite hardest. It's also true, but it's the most important to convince them and to work together with the industry. And that's also the opportunity within a small-sized city. You can talk to your industry players, and that alignment and working together creates the biggest impact. So therefore, in Ghent, we made a study together with the industry, which is called the Circular Transition Pathway. And this study shows us how we must work together as a city and industry to move towards circular economy. So the study, it gives us the tools and guidance, what we have to do, what the main pillars are of our circular economy, how we have to use the 5R model, and what waste streams we want to focus on. So if the industry will have to, so the industry itself will have to evolve to circularity in one way or another. So it's in the best interest of everyone to start as soon as possible. And this study shows us and the industry how transformation will not lead to an economic graveyard, but also to strong growth of our existing economy. So next slide, please. At this point, our industry is actually investing 100 millions or billions within the transition. This brings us to a next key insight for me. It's the value of talent and knowledge. So as stated, we are a big student city. So we have cutting edge research, we have business and educational institutions, and we use this information, this talent, to create more insights, to create more disruptive technologies. Also, jobs will change, so we have to start working early on gaining more insights and targeting the right talent and for the right jobs. So next slide. Create knowledge is also for me about creating knowledge by trial and error. It's not only about talent. We have many ideas or projects that really need a kickstart. It's necessary for a city to be a testing ground for a lot of new circular ideas. Many new projects can never take off if they cannot be tested. If they cannot be tried or fail. And therefore, it's interesting to working together with other European stakeholders to learn from each other. Right now, the possibilities for projects within circular economy, they're almost endless. So it's through these insights that circular innovation can gain a foothold. Otherwise, it's impossible to get circular innovation applicable or affordable. I think Manuel of Porto will go into some projects from Porto. We do have a lot of projects. The last projects we're working on is plastic waste recoverment and reuse, but also using the waste of our steel to get more greener concrete. Next slide, please. My fourth and last insight, if you really want to accelerate circular innovation, then you should create dedicated space and infrastructure for circular innovation. Space is limited, I think, in Ghent, but everywhere in Europe, and infrastructure gets old very fast. So creating new space or deliberate space for circularity, for me, it's a really necessity if you want to evolve to circular, or if you want to accelerate circular innovation. In Ghent, we try to think in value chains, so it's not possible anymore to start in our port area or to come in our city if you're not aligned or circular with other companies. And we work a lot to get more insights in those value chains. How can companies work together? So that's really a really important part. Next slide. Yeah, these spaces can be small units for citizens, but they can also be big brownfields, which evolve to big circular spaces. I think all of them are really important, but it's sure circularity needs its space, and you cannot drive or accelerate circular innovation if you don't have deliberate space for it. Next slide, please. You need infrastructure where you can test and pilot. So you have to work and create on the circularity. So as a city, we invest firmly in this test infrastructure. Circularity doesn't come from as its own. So you have to test, you have to try what can we do with to regenerate waste. So we have big pilot plants where we try new technologies, where we try new waste streams and recover it into new industries. And then I think the last, almost the last slide. So next slide it was. 4 key insights for me. You have to choose firmly to drive circular innovation within your city. You have to connect within your own city, connecting all policies together, but also with industries, with startups, with your citizens, and you have to do it together. Value your knowledge and dare to fail, and also location and infrastructure is really key to drive circular innovation. And then I think next slide. Thank you everyone for your attention. In Ghent, we're big enough to cope and small enough to care. So that's how we want to work together. Thank you everyone.
Thanks for the very broad integrated overview that you're giving of the different approaches that Ghent is taking. One of the, I think we can say, Europe's leading small to medium-sized cities in this field. So excellent insights. And let's move across now to Manuel. As mentioned, if you have specific questions to Dieter, put them in the chat or keep them back, and we will have a question session following the presentation from Manuel Semedo from the city of Porto. So Manuel, over to you.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, everyone, for inviting Porto. Congratulations to Dieter for the great presentation, the great work doing in Ghent. So I'll present how Porto is supporting the innovation on the circular city with 3 examples from 3 specific projects. So next slide, please. In 2017, Porto approved the circular roadmap for the city, which aims to become a circular city by 2030. And within 4 axes of action, then they were developed into these strategic actions, which embrace all the urban water cycle, the circular construction, the food system. So it's a kind of a holistic project to the city. Next slide, please. This the circular roadmap was interacting obviously with other areas and other strategies like the environmental strategy, and more recently the neutrality pact, climate pact for Porto. Next slide, please. So the first project I'm going to present is Food Loop. Food Loop is integrated in City Loops Horizon Europe 2020 project together with ICLEI also. And Food Loop is a circular entrepreneurship contest with the motto, one idea feeds the other. So the aim here was to try to bring the talents and innovators in the city regarding the food system with all these areas of intervention, local and organic production, food redistribution, food shelf life, industrial symbiosis, and moreover, also the valorization of the ideas would be if these areas were interconnected. In circular economy, it's usually one problem solves many problems, or one idea can solve different challenges, and this was what we wanted to promote. Next slide. So this contest did not have a money prize, so the city focused on giving training and mentorship to the contestants. So in a first phase, there will be a boot camp. There was a boot camp for the 20 ideas, and the main goal was to transform their ideas into pilot projects. So this contest was very open to very new and early stage ideas. And the boot camp took 3 days on a fast-paced environment. based on circular economy and impact economy. Then the idea was the contest prize was a 6 months mentorship to each of these 5 ideas to transform their pilot project into reality or into a practical implementation. This was done with the specific tutors or mentors, some master classes on funding, on innovation, on business models, business development, and also contacts with the experts, potential investors. And also in the end, an extra prize was that the University of Porto, the startup incubator, gave more 6 months incubation to the winner, to one of these 5 winners. So it was like an extra prize contest, but the incubator aligned with this product, and this goes also to what Dieter said, that it's to connect the dots, all just by oneself. Just for the city, it's not possible, but connecting all the dots, what everyone is doing, you can scale the potential to support innovation. Next slide, please. So these were the 5 winners of Food Loop. An idea for a small-scale and localized anaerobic digestion production unit to use in, for example, canteens in universities. Then the collection of coffee grounds to produce fresh vegetables on a urban space, and give some tax incentives or reduction if restaurants, for example, would buy back the coffee, the vegetables produced with these coffee grounds. The third one was Symbiose Agricultura Industria, which means industrial agricultural symbiosis, which was a project that wanted to use the excess carbon dioxide and heat from industrial facilities to create and produce vegetables, increasing photosynthesis in controlled environment. Upcycling Porto was a social economic model by using the city card to promote and democratize access to food leftovers and food waste in supermarkets. This would turn small data from supermarkets into big data for the city. And the last one, AgriTech for Youngsters, was a project to promote robotic education with urban smart farming in local schools and to teach students. So to let you know also that the agriculture and industrial symbiosis was the one that received the extra prize, because during the mentorship they were able to implement a prototype of these greenhouses with using the heat and the CO2 that is around the industrial facilities, and they were able to produce basil with a much more with an increasing yield. So next slide. Thank you. So in the Food Loop was one project, then Good Food Hubs, and the next one, Reboot. They are both of them are under a Living Lab project, which is called the Esprela Mais Sustentável. And Good Food Hubs is for it's a project that aims to humanize the food system. Next slide. So the Good Food Hubs, it's a project that was born in the COVID pandemic and was the realization of the fragile value chains we have on food and how unsustainable they are. So the aim is to reduce food waste, to increase sustainability, to turn the food system to become more rational, more connected also the consumer with the producer, to increase participation in the city, and to promote innovation and research. Next slide. So Good Food Hubs is based on sustainable food practices that wants to promote sustainable criteria in canteens. Then research projects, pop-up events for food sale and delivery. These are what we call the markets, and we are doing markets in the entrance of universities, organic farmers markets, directly between producers and consumers, and activities and workshops that would facilitate all these. So the big innovation here, next slide please, is and how we are supporting the innovation is that we wanted to digitalize the fresh organic markets. Being in students, in the universities, in these areas, we wanted to make them digital. And this is something that proved to be a challenge, but we found a startup in Porto that had this idea. It actually applied to Food Loop, but we decided that we wanted to go a bit further, trying to make their idea into practice. And so what we did was that we hired them, their services, to create this platform, to create this app, and we provide all the direct contact between producers and consumers. We facilitated connections. We also showed our needs regarding good food hubs, and there was a great dialogue between the city and the innovators, how to achieve a common ground and how to develop solutions for these specific needs. If you want, you can visit horti.co and you can find the presentation of the app. And next slide, please. And on Reboot, the last one, Reboot is a project that aims to recover, repair, and donate, or donate computers. So this project, next slide. This was also developed during the COVID pandemic, where lots of people had to go to their homes, mainly students, and suddenly they had no access to digital environments. And of course, disconnected with the resource use of IT equipment, Reboot was born, aiming to increase sustainability and recognizing the value of computers and the use that we do to computers. There's no need to buy new computers when we have lots of old used IT equipments that can be used. Next slide, please. So what we do in Reboot is, together with the waste management companies, Porto Ambiente and Lipor, and European Recycling Platform, there is the collection of out-of-use equipments. Then we prepare training sessions or repair cafes where we provide these out-of-use equipments to be repaired in local. And in the end, the repaired equipments are given and distributed to social institutions in the city that will guarantee that they are given or they are helping those that need the equipment. Here, the innovator is the Recycle Geeks. Next slide, please. So with Recycle Geeks, they didn't have, so they had this specific business model where they recover old parts of computers and they share the profits between the donor and the social institution. So in Porto, we decided that we cannot have the ownership of the computers for a long time because they are coming from the waste flows. And there was this high environmental and social and economic value that would be given to social institutions and to people that wanted to repair. So Recycle Geeks were hired and we support them on using their parts that they had already recovered so that we do not buy more new parts to repair the computers, and also to give training. And also this was a way to promote their business model and to promote them. And we also have a part where we were talking with the Recycle Geeks, trying to define what are the limits with the budgets that we have, how is it possible, what is really possible to repair, recover, and be good to be reused, or what is not, depending on the IT specifications and all the software needs. So I think this is it. Next slide. Yeah. So yeah, thank you. And I think I think two insights, main insights is like as a city, we can promote directly the circular transition with innovators and support them. And it's very important that we know that we are trying and testing new things, that error is a very common thing to happen, and not to be afraid of error failing. And also to let the innovators use the city and share them the space, the territory. Let them try to give us limits, or at least let the innovators push our limits and try to answer them, and not the other way around. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks very much, Manuel, for that presentation and some really interesting concrete activities that are taking place in Porto. And a site, yeah, your insights that I think very much align with what Dieter was also saying previously as well. And I now know what to do with my used coffee grounds that I produce on an almost industrial scale here at home as well, which is great to see. Okay, now we're going to move over to a short discussion before we kick off with the final presentations. So it'll be excellent to hear any questions that the audience have, either for Dieter or Manuel on what they're doing. We would also be very interested to hear from any other cities or regional administrations that we have present about your experiences in trying to promote innovation in your area. So we have one question that's already appeared in the chat, and this is a question directly to Manuel. What percentage of computers can be repaired? So in relation to your reboot program, Manuel.
Yeah, so right now we are seeing that around 60%, 65% of the computers can be repaired. And this is taking into consideration that some of them come from the waste flows, which are very, very damaged. We believe that this can go high as 80, 85% if companies would refurbish their IT equipment, and for example, we donate the old ones, because the thing is that companies tend to have high needs for software or for parts that with a good development, but social institutions only need to use web browser, writer, and then Microsoft Word, Excel. So this is very easy to give access to and to repair.
Great, thank you. And I think a surprisingly high number for many of us listening. Okay, any other questions from the audience, or you could also raise your hand to put questions forward. While you think of that, I would have a question that I'd like to pose to both of the speakers, maybe Dieter to start off with from your side. We've heard the ambitions of both Ghent and Porto in this area and some really encouraging activities that you're putting in place. But what do you see as the biggest barriers, the biggest hurdles, the biggest challenges of actually trying to create innovation and to make a difference finally in the market? Dieter, from your side.
Actually, the way of long-term implementation of a circular innovation, for me, that's full of hurdles. If you want to go for full implementation, it's quite, just to start your project, it's really hard to get the right investments, to get the right partners with you. So that's for me, to get the right financing, to really get the kickstart, because mostly on the economic scale it's not interesting to start with, but only when it gets from a lower TRL level to the higher TRL levels. I think that's really big leap. The value of that with circular innovation is really big within 4 and 7 TRL levels. And I also think the legislative framework around it is really hard, because you can have great insight, you can have really great innovation, but that doesn't mean you can implement it always. So we've made great new concrete with waste streams of our steel industry, but now we've set up some examples, some for street furniture and a fire caser. That's interesting, but if you want to really implement it and use it within your procurement, there are a lot of hurdles, because it's not always the legislative framework doesn't always follow. So that's, for me, are really big hurdles, where we as a city also have to work on to get to higher public entities to discuss it on a higher level. But that for me is quite hard, to scale really from innovation to real long-term implementation. It's quite hard.
Yeah, and you've picked on my follow-up question to that, Dieter, of course. So what is the role of then the city administrations in that process? So I think you've identified there 2 really substantial hurdles. What can cities do then to try to tackle those hurdles?
Yeah, that's the thing I wanted to show in my presentation. I think a city can be a playing ground for trial and error, where you can test things. If it works, it doesn't work, to know what are the real hurdles. So as the plasticity project showed out, we wanted to get more industrial waste streams in our commercial area. But how can you manage it to get it on a to raise within the really dense area where a lot of tourists are? How can you get the plastics what are the right plastics? What can you do with the plastics to get more like the testing ground? That's really important for a city. And then really to see what are the hurdles and try to discuss it with other entities within the city or with other frameworks. Yeah.
Absolutely, and this comes back to what Kristin was saying right at the beginning about the role of cities there as a place where we can, of course, experiment. Manuel, over to you. Are these hurdles that you recognise, and are there other hurdles that you would particularly focus on?
No, actually, I am very aligned with what Dieter said. The financing and the investment part, which I also believe that in circular economy, we were talking in Kristin in their slides showed the value creation. So circular economy creates more than economic value, social value, environmental value. But I think these innovators struggle to make their economic model be valorized when they very easily show their environmental model or their social model. So there is here a challenge to promote all these new innovations. And then regarding legislation, I totally agree with what Dieter said, but also I would add that, for example, in Reboot, there is this the waste legislation, which is very hard to declassify waste, which makes it hard for these materials to become resources again and to be used by industries and entrepreneurs to develop new materials, and also the waste management is a very national, original competence, and it's very difficult for private companies to enter in this world and to get these resources and make new products, develop new services. So I think there's also a big challenge on this area regarding legislation.
Excellent points. Great. Okay, we have another couple of questions in the chat here. First one, Manuel, again, targeted at you. One of the specific examples you presented. How many greenhouses could be linked to industrial buildings, and how successful has it been in reducing the carbon footprint?
Great question. Sorry, I don't know the specific answer, because this is a very, like, it was really a prototype. There was one greenhouse linked to one ceramic, I believe, ceramic industry, and the calculations of the carbon footprint reduction and all of these were not made. The yield, because this was promoted by a basil producer actually, that realized that he could use the excess heat and CO2 from industry to the greenhouses. He said that he produced basil, he was able to reduce like 20% the grow times with the greenhouses next to the industrial facilities. So this is the data that we have. Then it's not these calculations, specific calculations were not made, but it's promising.
Okay, so one to watch in that case. I think as all the innovations which you presented there, Manuel, it would be good to see what happens 5 years down the line with these initiatives. Okay, I think we've got time for one more question before we move on to the next phase of the project, and we have a broader question here. So how can the implementation of circular economy initiatives be safeguarded for long-term success, particularly in situations where changes in city administration can potentially exert significant and disruptive effects on ongoing efforts? Something I think anyone working within a city administration has some understanding of. So would either of you like to respond on this point? How can we maintain this in the longer term? Dieter?
Yeah, I can start. So that's really a challenge. Although I think if you really start circular economy initiatives and you turn them into economic viable processes, that's really possible. And that's the thing the city can play a role in. So you have to start by testing, you have to start by using it. And then if there's probably it takes a few years, but then they can be concurrential and against non-circular initiatives. And I think that's really a positive way to look at it and to see that's really it will become concurrential. And by talking to our industry or to all our stakeholders within the city, we know we have to evolve to a circular economy. I think that the presentation of Kristin said it quite good, but the need to evolve to circular economy and the scarcity of products is becoming more and more we're in need of some products. So I think it will turn out by itself. I think as a city you need to prepare on what is coming. You know, the price of water is going to be much more expensive. So now you have to work on how can we reuse, recycle water, and the reuse of water will if you start it now, it will another city administration will be forced to work on new water projects. So I think you have to start early enough and think what is coming in the next coming years, and not look only one or 2 years ahead, but looking in the far future. So yeah, it's important to look further than one legislation or city administration.
Thanks, Dieter. I can see Manuel nodding. I don't know whether you've got anything to add to this.
Yep. Just add that it's also important to monitor and to have data about what you are doing. It's very important to have this long-term goal where even different administrations will be embraced in this long-term goal, but it's also very important to monitor and to understand what you are doing and to communicate this with the administrations. For example, if you refurbish furniture or IT equipment, how much you are really saving and how circular economy is really impacting the city, how many jobs are you creating, what's the economic value of all these measures, the environmental value of all these measures. So more than the initiative. When you start to put them into action, start taking recovering the data, the indicators, so you can communicate the impacts, and that will be an important thing to do, because it's administrations will have these data, and then it's not just an opinion or a strategy from another administration, it's real data and real value that they need to take into account.
Very good point, absolutely. And I think we saw this at the beginning of Dieter's presentation as well, with specific figures on the number of organizations, the number of jobs, the amount of CO2 savings, of course, and these are things that decision makers look at, understandably, within this. So, well, thank you very much for this discussion. We're going to move on now. I think you have Dieter and Manuel's contact details in any case from the presentation, so if there are further questions, you can, of course, get in touch. But now we're going to move on to the third part of the webinar today, looking a bit more detail specifically at the two projects, CircularInvest and DEFINITE-CCRI, and a new community that is also being created from these two projects as well. But the next presentation I'm going to pass across to Dora Fazekas, who is the coordinator of CircularInvest, to talk a little bit about the project. So Dora, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Simon, and hello to everyone. So today I'm going to talk about the PDAs in European cities, and I'm going to focus then on two specific PDA initiatives, DEFINITE-CCRI and CircularInvest. Next slide, please. So what are the PDAs? I think Simon mentioned already at the beginning of this webinar some hints like business support, etc. But before going into details on what these are, I wanted to tell you a little bit about how these PDAs emerged. So as you could see from the previous presentations, European cities, regions, but also other actors have already started to roll out research, testings, and the implementation of circular projects so that they can move into and accelerate the transition towards a more sustainable development model. And Manuel and Dieter also highlighted some challenges and difficulties that project developers might face. So project developers often run into problems maybe not, but challenges for sure. And it happens often when, as Dieter said, when you start scaling up the projects, or when you would like to turn these projects into economically viable processes, and these difficulties often hinder the actual implementation of these initiatives. So basically becoming circularity into a reality. And these challenges are often related to, as Dieter said, legislative framework, that they are not aligned, or it's difficult to navigate through them, market issues, or investment, financial difficulties, especially when it comes to accessing finance. And for that reason, and to remedy this situation, the EU activated a project development assistance instrument, and that is PDA, under its Circular Cities and Regions initiative. This CCRI initiative in general focuses on the implementation of circular economy in Europe and European cities and regions. And the PDAs are an instrument under the CCRI, and they deal with advancing or helping this process of implementing circular economy and supporting specifically the delivery of circular economy projects. Next slide, please. So the PDAs, how do they do this support to the delivery of projects? The PDAs provide advisory support to circular project promoters on different aspects, technical, financial, legal aspects. They with the aim to increase these projects' maturity and increase their investment readiness and help their access to finance. So they don't provide financial support themselves, but they do provide advisory services to help access finance, but also help on other aspects. Under CCRI, 7 PDA support projects have been approved. I think this is an ongoing process. There are new initiatives also coming up, PDA initiatives to support circular economy projects across Europe. Today we are focusing, as I said, on CircularInvest and DEFINITE-CCRI. These are the organizers actually of this webinar as well. Next slide, please. So briefly on DEFINITE-CCRI. I don't know if you can visualize this cycle, what is on the screen, but basically it just shows how circular projects are selected in DEFINITE-CCRI and how they are assessed, and then they are approved, and then the PDA services are provided under a deal engine brokerage mechanism. And at the moment, in DEFINITE-CCRI, there are already some projects selected, and they are in the phase of a technical assessment and impact assessment for these projects for their approval and then the provision of these PDA services. If you would like to know more about these steps and what kind of services will be provided to the selected projects and know more about the projects, you can visit the website, which is copied on this slide. Next slide, please. So on the other initiative, CircularInvest, is basically, it has the same aim as DEFINITE-CCRI. So it's a PDA initiative. It helps local and regional circular economy projects to become investment ready and access financial resources. It provides free PDA services. I listed here through 3 support services that CircularInvest provides through PDA. So the first one is mentoring and coaching services to the selected projects on technical, business, legal, and operational aspects. It also provides a peer-to-peer support scheme. It means that the selected projects are paired or clustered, and basically they help each other and try to solve each other's challenges through sharing their own knowledge and experience. And there are a number of networking events also organized where the selected projects can participate and meet European circular economy stakeholders, including also investors. Next slide, please. Going back to the coaching and mentoring services that CircularInvest provides. These are services that are offered by experts on a basically one-to-one expert mentoring, I would say, throughout 6 to 9 months. And these mentoring coaching services are given in 3 categories, 3 different areas. The first one is circularity optimization. So it's to increase or maximize the circularity of these projects, but also help them, for example, map relevant stakeholders or best practices, etc. Business plan development, so helping on the business side, business strategy review, market analysis, helping on the financial aspects, reviewing the risk strategy, etc. And fundraising, so mapping the financial stakeholder ecosystem, identifying relevant investors, financiers, linking these projects with these stakeholders, etc. The support services are customized. So within these categories, they are customized to the needs of the selected projects. Next slide, please. So who can benefit from these services? So there is not, the typology of the organizations is not an eligibility criterion. So basically any type of organization can apply. We listed some examples: utility companies, local municipalities, regional authorities, companies, universities, etc. It can be a consortium or sole applicant. When it comes to sole applicants, what we would like to add is that it's important that you bring on board some kind of an institutional support from your city or region. Next slide, please. And zooming down into the concrete opportunity that could be interesting for you is that is related to the open calls. So projects, circular economy projects are selected through open calls. We already launched one call in April that closed in June. And through this call, we selected already 3 circular economy projects that we are going to support throughout the next months. But importantly, we are launching another call as well tomorrow. So opening on the 17th of October, closing on the 15th of December, where you can apply with your circular economy project. You can do this through our website, CircularInvest.eu. It's important that you look at the eligibility criteria. So there is a list of criteria that each applicant and the project have to meet. Next slide, please. Here are the steps to follow for the application. So there is a need to register. It's very quick, actually. Create a user account in the website. Fill in the application form. This is done online. And submit the application. This is also done online. Okay, so this is the consortium that promotes actually CircularInvest. And if you have more questions, next slide, or if you have any questions, you can raise it I think at the end of this session, but also you can also send us an email to info@circularinvest.eu. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much, Dora. Yes, indeed. So if you would like to raise any questions, you can again put them in the chat. We'll come back following our final presentation. But of course, we're all happy to answer any questions you have by email as well. So final presentation of the day, I'm going to pass back across to Kristin, who I hope is still able to join us. There's been 1 or 2 technical problems. Kristin, are you available?
I hope you can hear me. I'm on my phone, but I hope it works fine.
We can. It seems to work very well. So over to you, Kristin.
Fantastic. All right, so between our 2 projects, between DEFINITE and CircularInvest, we have developed this joint initiative, a community of practice, which we called a Circular Investment Readiness Network. Next slide, please. So we decided to join our forces in order to have a larger selection of different projects that will join this community of practice, but also reaching a wider network of different EU stakeholders that are interested in bridging this gap between circular project on one side and circular investors on the other. So this Circular Investment Readiness Network is consisting of 5 sessions together between our 2 projects, starting now in November 23. So the 21st of November 2023, we have our first session, and then it's followed by 5 additional sessions in only by CircularInvest from June 25 to October 26. Next slide, please. So through collective learning, this community of practice, we aim to support the development of these bankable, high impact and low risk circular projects, but also creating these long lasting relationships. So we really aim to have a space where you can network and exchange knowledge with peers and also find new partners and investors to actually invest into these circular projects that we know are so important. So the topics that we will cover during our community of practice is, amongst other, getting started with circular projects, measuring and ensuring impact, investment readiness and development of business models, but also pitching to investors. So these are some of the topics that we will cover, and it might be more or less. We will co-create this together with you to see what needs are out there. So stay tuned what we will actually cover more in detail. Next slide, please. And for this community of practice, we target, of course, project owners across the EU, but also local and regional governments to see how the cities can enable these environments, the circular environments that we need. We're also targeting SMEs and startups, of course, investors, other project development assistance providers, and external service providers who can actually support the development of these bankable circular projects. And of course, we will invite different experts from the field, both to provide knowledge and experiences through, for example, panel discussions, presentations, but also facilitating breakout rooms. Next slide, please. So we now invite you all to join this network. And as I said before, it will take place, the first one online on the 21st of November. So please use this QR code to sign up to this network, and we will have an opportunity to discuss our challenges and opportunities together. That was it for me.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Kristin. So yes, two very clear opportunities for our participants today to get directly involved in what we're doing. Please feel free to join us in this new network being set up, and also, of course, the open call for applications, which Dora mentioned, which is opening tomorrow specifically for CircularInvest. Okay, so right at the end here, we have an opportunity for any questions you might have, either about the new network which is being set up or about the CircularInvest PDA call that is opening tomorrow. So once again, anybody can put their questions in the chat or simply raise their hand. Maybe while people are thinking of questions, if they have any, Dora, if I could ask you, what were the type of applications that were received for the first round of applications under CircularInvest?
All right, I need to recall all these applications, but received, well, first of all, we received applications from different European countries. And we received a lot of applications that are related to projects for developing digital platforms. So for sure, there were a lot of applications that were related to digital platforms, for example, for exchanging or selling food before its validity and enhancing the interaction between the sellers and buyers. So facilitating basically circularity activities or circular activities. Or other examples are, for example, an example similar to what Manuel explained, ICT equipment, also a digital platform that helps connecting those that repair these ICT devices like phones and laptops with those that need to fix their devices, but also for B2B type of connections. Received applications also on non-digital aspects, such as a renovation of monuments and using circularity in buildings and in renovation. Projects related to agriculture, technology related, for example, to recovering nutrients from food waste and offering that to specific sectors. So quite a number of applications in different covering different sectors, I would say, but a lot of dominance on digital aspects and digital platforms.
Great, thanks for the insight. And yes, I mean, I think that you mentioned before the peer-to-peer exchange that we have within this. So I think there will be similar activities happening in other cities, and that's why that's such an important part of this process as well. Are there any eligibility restrictions regarding location, Dora, for where the applications can come from?
Yeah, so we focus on EU countries and also on countries that are associated to the Horizon Europe program. This list is available on our website, so I'm not going to read it out. We are still confirming the participation of UK. I know they are joining as associated country to the Horizon Europe program from the 1st of January. So this is a possibility. We are closing the application process on just before Christmas, so to avoid any issues around Christmas and the timing. But we are still assessing and validating this possibility with the European Commission. There are also other eligibility criteria. I think it's important that you look at the list that we make available on our website related to circularity aspects, but also the importance of generating local regional impact, so impact at a territorial level, etc.
Excellent. The eligibility of the UK, a topic particularly close to my heart, as you can probably imagine. So I hope this is sorted out quickly. Okay, there is one question in the chat here. Do you support projects that are the result of student work in universities, for example, recycling clothes as building materials? What do they recommend? Should a startup be created first and then apply, or should the university apply?
I think it's a very good question. I think that also takes us a little bit to the maturity of the project, but in general, this could be an eligible project. So it doesn't matter if it comes from student work. What matters is that it meets the eligibility criteria on circularity, and it's mature, sufficiently mature to apply for the services. We are looking for sufficiently mature project, so that at least have a prototype or a minimum viable product already. Well, it doesn't matter who takes the project further, whether it's a university or whether it's a startup. It's important that it has a governance model in place, and there is already a business model structured around the project that gives an idea on how the project will evolve and implement it further on. I don't know if my colleagues have any comments on this. I know they are in the line with us, but that's I think that's my answer to the question.
Okay, if there are no further inputs, thanks for that. So we have the link to the application process has now been put in the chat as well, so you can go directly to that. If there are no further questions regarding any of this, I think we can probably then close the session a little bit early. All the information is available through the websites which you have received throughout the webinar. Could someone remind me whether we are also sharing the presentation somehow, or if these will be made available, and if so, how?
It's recorded as well, but we can also share the slides. They are a little bit heavy, but we can try to maybe upload it on the website in a downloadable format.
Very good. Sounds good. Great. Okay, so in that case, I think we can come to a close today. So thank you very much again to our speakers, to Kristin, to Dieter, to Manuel, and to Dora. And also thank you very much for everyone participating today and the questions raised. We hope you found that interesting. And as mentioned, you can find further information available following the webinar as well. So thank you all and have a good afternoon.